How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good. So before we begin today, I know all your faces, but I don't know all the names because I'm terrible with names. So if we can go around real quick and just introduce ourselves, that would be awesome. I can start with myself. My name is Bassem, for those of you who don't know me. I serve here in the Youth Academy. I'm a deacon as well. I've been at St. Paul since pretty much the beginning. I love it so much. And I am not a parent. So I'm not going to be here telling you what to do as parents because I am not a parent myself, so I can't speak from experience. But I'm going to be sharing with you guys what I've been reading and learning, and I want it to be more of a discussion. So I'm going to share with you like a point that the author says in the book that we're covering, and then you guys will kind of say what really makes sense out of the book, what is really you've tried maybe in your families and with your kids and it's not working or makes sense. And it's going to be kind of more of a discussion, not more of me speaking with authority and telling you this is how it should be. You guys are not doing it right. Okay, that's a really long introduction. Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Mike.
I'm Laura.
Adam.
Marianne.
Eddie.
Marlene. Angel.
Wow, that was really quick.
Just report.
Cool. Let me plug this in and we'll get started. This is the first time that the ARK is at 10 a.m., right?
Yeah. Yes.
How do you guys like that or not like that? We did that based on a survey that we got from a bunch of you guys, but I just wanted to hear, now that you've actually committed to, or that you've tried it and you came and stuff, do you like that or not like that?
Much better. Yes.
Much better?
When was it before?
It was
like
one or
I don't
two?
remember.
Two?
Carrington. One.
Oh.
It was one or two. Anything.
Yeah.
Same. It was like right at nap time.
Yes.
All the
It was
days.
right at nap time.
And this is what servants without kids doesn't get.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
They would fall asleep
And that's
on
why we
my
ask
ear,
you.
and then they'd be groggy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're groggy too. Yeah.
Are you saying now is nap time or
No.
before?
No, 1 o'clock.
Ah,
This
okay.
is a struggle for all the parents with little ones.
Ah, okay.
Does they really have naps every day?
Yes.
On schedule every day?
Not really,
Yeah.
but they get tired and like
Lately they
not
don't-
happy.
They don't do the
For
naps.
the sometimes yes, sometimes no. Like for us, it works us for both times, but we prefer the one.
Like a little later, give us a
Yeah.
little
Oh,
more
really?
time in the morning, then we can do breakfast.
Yeah.
Now we rush through everything in the morning.
Yeah, speaking of breakfast, I
getting
hope
ready for
you
school.
all got a good breakfast this morning. It's the first day of not fasting. But I hear that the word on the street is that parents don't fast anyways because they have kids.
You're not
and
parent,
they're
you're not.
sharing. So I don't get to make the excuse, but see you guys
Yeah,
get.
those things don't
I was like saying, I hope you have good breakfast, and everyone's like, what was happening?
It's really difficult. So I'm like,
Getting breakfast in general.
You can do it on a daily basis.
yeah. Let's back up. Let's back up. First breakfast. Let's get
Yeah.
breakfast on the table and everyone there.
The point is what the kids are very picky for food, so they can eat the
I'm
beans,
really gonna
the
enjoy
lettuce.
this.
Yeah.
This
This
is really
one's
funny.
yeah,
Eat whatever they don't eat.
It's a battle. Yeah, the leftover. I mean,
Yes. The leftover.
I'm just like the garbage disposal of the house.
That's how I eat.
It's all like mashed and
This is hilarious.
different temperatures, and I'm
This
just
is
like,
all recorded, by
This
the
is
way.
everyone who knows.
Everyone
Relate.
knows.
Will relate. Same food, different temperatures, different textures. I'm like, why is this all different? Okay, well, I just don't wanna
So
know.
is it
I just don't wanna
recordings
know.
to be able to listen to later? Like if you miss
Yeah,
one?
if-
Oh, okay.
Yes. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Because then people don't show up.
Oh no. So where is it posted? Like, is it posted on the website?
Moodle?
Or Moodle?
It's Moodle, I
Oh,
think.
okay.
I think.
So,
But
so it's not
all of
public
the-
access.
double check with Sandy.
Oh, really? Okay.
What did you say?
Most of the lectures that are in this room are recorded. Like
Yeah, they
Thursday
are.
night Bible study.
They are, but I don't know where they put them.
It's in Moodle.
Oh, the Bible
Where
studies
they
are
are.
in Moodle too?
He's in
Yeah.
Moodle.
The Bible
YouTube,
study is for sure in Moodle.
Sound-
Bible study is
SoundCloud.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Oh, and
I
YouTube,
found in
yes.
YouTube
That's
also.
You
true.
access it, yeah, and you can access it from there. Okay, so I just want to start by saying, and clearly we kind of saw that in the discussion, you guys are really like champions. It's really amazing being a parent and what you guys do. Like I can't even imagine myself being a parent one day. It's so much, and I think God is so wise that He takes us like through steps. Like in the beginning, when you're growing up and into your like youth years, God is telling you like, okay, can you control yourself and sacrifice a little bit of yourself to get closer to me? And then He's like, okay, I think you're learning this. Okay, next step, I'm gonna have you get married, and you're gonna need to start learning how to sacrifice of your own self and of your selfishness and your ego and all that, and get married and see how you can be successful in that. And then when you get past that and you're doing good there, then it's like the next step, which is like one of the highest, is like, okay, now you're ready to fully die to yourself, right? And have kids and really be giving all of your life, your entire life, to your spouse, to your children. And so you guys are really amazing, all of you, and good job. Everyone knows it's not easy, and that's why there's a whole bunch of books and lectures and talks and all that. And that's why a really big reason sometimes families fail is because of the stress of parenthood and how much that affects the relationship between a man and his wife. And so good job. And you guys are not just surviving there, but you're even sacrificing on one of the most precious days, on Saturdays, to come give up that time and to come here to the church and try to become better and try to give your children time to be in the church. So, really good job doing that. And you guys are doing really, really important work because you're like building mansions in heaven, right? Because you're preparing your kids to go to heaven. You're preparing yourself and your spouse to go to heaven, and so you're doing God's work, and God's work is never easy. God's work is very difficult, but the awesome thing about it is we don't do it on our own, right? We do it by God's grace, and so we're gonna be here talking about. Continuing the book. What's the book that you guys have been covering? Does anyone remember the title?
Parenting towards the
Good job. Parenting towards the kingdom. Is this anyone's first week here in the ARK? Yeah? Okay. Andrew has been here? Okay, cool. So, yeah, we've been covering parenting towards the kingdom. And we are on chapter 4 today. And so, what are some things that I guess you guys got from the last 3 chapters, if you remember anything? Any important points you guys got from the last 3 chapters?
Like when you discipline the kids in a certain situation, you just don't look at the consequences of this situation. Just you look for a future goal. You're just trying to implement some principles for the kids. So you control yourself. Don't throw your frustration on the kid at that moment, and then so it's a progress step. It doesn't happen overnight. Yeah.
Yes. What else? Well, let me remind you of the chapter title. So the first one I think is what you're referring to, which is think long term. The second one was how children learn. Was anyone here for that one? How children learn? Or remember anything from it?
I think it was making kids, how to make your kids approaching to the church and being approaching to the thinking of God and the church, this stuff.
I think that one was Peter Awat.
Yeah.
I think gave that one. Yeah.
To find the opportunity to
The discipline, I
introduce
think,
God into
was
the
the last
conversation
one.
whenever it comes up.
Find the
The
opportunity. What?
discipline was the last one. The discipline
Yeah, that's
was the
right.
last one.
That's right. Sorry, what were you saying, Rami?
I think trying to get the opportunity whenever the opportunity comes to talk to them about like God and what happened in the church. Whenever there is like
You have this chance to
Whenever you have a
take
chance.
them to the church. If you have a chance, you have to make a chance. Actually, not
Yeah.
wait for the chance to just when you have the free time to go to the church, or you have to attempt to go to the church, because that builds the relation between them and the church.
And then last week or last time was I think Victor Garas, and it was responding to our children. Does anyone remember anything from that one? We weren't here.
That was the seven one.
I remember like not making it about yourself, like not telling them like I'm so proud of you, like making it about them.
Oh, okay.
That was something because
That's an
I find
interesting
myself
point.
saying, "Oh, I'm so proud of you," but I didn't think that was like wrong to say that.
Yeah.
I guess there's a different way to say it to make it about them.
Yeah.
Wait, saying I'm not proud of
So
you.
like telling them like I noticed that you shared.
Oh,
Good
okay.
job.
Like get specific.
Like yeah, like don't just say I'm so proud of you because then you're making it about them just making you proud and not them making good choices.
Yeah.
And
That
actually,
part's-
that's a good point
that
because
part's good
also
help.
I remember reading that when you tell them you're doing a good job, you're praising them.
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
not praising the action they did.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
So they tend to be a little selfish when they grow up, or maybe like to have pride or self-esteem, high self-esteem. So it's always praise the stuff that they did. I saw you sharing. That was a great job.
Yeah.
Very good.
It takes effort to
Yeah.
think about doing it.
Because we really, at the end of the day, we're very selfish, all of us, right? And we want it to be about us. How much have you made my life easier? And even in marriage, like I'll be sharing a lot of things in marriage because that's the step I'm in still. I'm not in at your step. So but yeah, it's so easy to like praise your spouse for doing something for you, right? Like, oh wow, that was, I don't know, like in whatever ways that you're praising them, but because it made you happy or affected. Not really good job about you yourself. So that's a very good point. Okay. Cool. So we're gonna get started with chapter 4, and chapter 4, the title of it is Why Children Misbehave. So we're gonna kind of look at some reasons why kids misbehave. Before I get into that, I'm gonna go back a few steps. Do you guys know, or have y'all discussed what's the purpose of the ARK? Like, why do we have the ARK? Who was here, like, in the beginning when we introduced this idea, or why do we have this?
To bring the families together.
Okay.
The kids. And church as well.
So when you say bring the families together,
As far as the parents.
Okay.
Getting to know each other.
yeah. What else? What are some other reasons aside from building community between the parents?
Talk about things of interest to everybody because everybody have
Yeah.
the kids and they are going through almost the same
Yeah.
thing.
We think
Like
you
sharing
guys have a lot.
experiences together.
Exactly. You guys have a lot in common, and because of that, you're all at the same stage of that your kids, and so just getting the opportunity to spend time together is very important. What else?
For the kids that they attach, I didn't hear what had been said, but I guess for the kids side to attach more with the church, and they have more time with the servant, so they get
Absolutely.
closer. So that's make a relation so for the future. They have the trusted people to talk to,
Yes.
or they have like another people than outside,
Yes.
which is great.
And we think that's really, really big. One of the main things in the youth academy is we're trying to kind of set main people in each child's life as they go through the whole youth academy, that as they are growing, they are looking at that person exactly like you're saying, and this is kind of my go-to person, this is my mentor. And we're trying to build these relationships. They're very key. And so doing something like that where they're able to spend more time and not just in the class in that 1 hour on Sunday, but playing, doing activities, other time and all that, that's a very key point. Very good. And then one other point was just to have an opportunity to develop as parents, to learn about parenthood and develop your parenthood skills. And so yes, these are all exactly the points that is the purpose of the ARK. So I want you guys, when you're coming here, be thinking that I'm coming here for that mission, and everything we're going to be doing here will be targeted towards that. If you see anything that you think can be improved to get us into that mission or to meet those goals, please suggest to us and let us know, because we want to be really building a strong community amongst the parents. We think one of the biggest things that we want to develop at St. Paul's is a strong community between the body of Christ. We believe that that's extremely important for keeping people in the church, for keeping people in love. And what are two words that are always repeated over and over in the book of Acts? Two words that are repeated so many times in the book of Acts about this.
Probably
Together?
Yes, but it's two words. It means together, but it's in one accord. One accord. If you read through the book of Acts over and over and over, it says, and they were together praying or having fellowship or eating or whatever in one accord, in one accord, in one accord. And that's the first church. That's the church that we always look to, and this is kind of the church we want to build here, right? And so we want to have that one accord. And so it's extremely important to get out of our comfort zones and to start building those relationships. And that's going to happen by getting out of our comfort zone, by being vulnerable, sharing maybe embarrassing things and experiences, spending time. But we need to be purposeful about doing that, because it's very easy to just want to be in our own world, right? And just do our thing. And so just keep these things in mind as you're coming to the ARK. Okay, so we'll start with chapter 4, why children misbehave. So I'll start by asking you that question before we start talking about the book. Why do children misbehave?
For attention?
Okay, that's exactly point number 1. So very good.
I think there's just
That was hers, actually. But you guys are one. That's true. Very good, Mandy.
Out of boredom, really.
Boredom, okay.
That's my experience. When they're bored, they misbehave.
They need to
Yeah.
be challenged.
Power struggle.
Power struggle, okay.
I think sometimes it's a way they're trying to communicate a need to you, but they're not putting it in words.
Very good.
Yeah, they're trying to connect with you.
Yes. Man, have you guys read the chapter?
No?
No, we have kids.
Read like it's scary.
We could write the book.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. What else?
Fatigue, maybe?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so he starts the.
I think
yeah.
it's more like it's kind of some evil which already create in us, like when God create us with good and evil inside us. So it's, sometimes it's a little evil because they are like innocent. So sometimes they do it. So they try like just to piss you off. You said you ask yourself how they get that.
We're all like, amen,
So
amen.
the only thing that's
They know how to press it back in.
how he gets that's very evil to kill his
Yeah.
blood. So I think it's something like it's already created inside us,
Yeah.
and sometimes they learn with the times for our globe now, like with watching some videos, with seeing some other children like say cry, saying but they trying to do it in their own with a little, very little evil which inside us all.
Yeah.
So that's sometimes because you said how they get it.
Yeah. So this is. I think you said 2 points. 2 different points that are very important. There's the one point about seeing other kids doing it and copying, and this is going to be something that we kind of talk about and that he addresses in this chapter. And that's a very big effect. Why children misbehave is because of the people they're around, the kids they're around. The kids are acting up, and they've maybe been in a camp maybe for a week or 2, and they've been gone for a long time, and they got a lot of this. It takes some time when you get back home to kind of transition to the home environment and how we live in this house and things like that. So definitely influences from other. The part about like the evil from within, God did not create us with any evil. God created us perfect. God gave us free will. And we, out of our free will, chose to sin, right? And then that's the original sin. And that has been passed along. And so we all have corrupted natures, right? And we all had the original sin. And then when we get baptized, we are reborn. But yes, we all have the free will to choose to do evil. I just wanted to clarify, God himself did not create any evil in us.
No, yeah, I understand.
But God gave us the free will, and then we.
But how they catch it? Like Cain, how he get it? There was no people to copy from them.
Yeah.
So how he get the bad thing?
Because sin started, and then we fell, right? In the Garden of Eve, because of our sin, we fell, and so we got corrupted natures, and then we started living, making bad choices, and that sin was introduced into the world, right? And then it started getting worse and worse and worse. Okay. Okay, these are very good. So he starts the book with an example, and he says, you're going to put your child to sleep, and then your child sneezes on you. And then not just do they sneeze once, but they keep sneezing and sneezing and sneezing on you, and they cover you all with their sneeze, right? You may be very tempted to want to like get aggravated or like angry, especially if you're new, I guess, to parenthood. I think you guys are all probably very immune to this by now, but like or if you're tired or whatever it is,
Is not the worst.
or vomiting, or yeah, whatever it is. But if you try to stop them or you try to tell them not to do that, is that going to work? No, that's not going to work. You're going to aggravate them. You're going to aggravate yourself. You're trying to do something that makes no sense. But what? Because children are born to sneeze. They sneeze. That's a part of who they are. And drool and all that kind of stuff. And so we just have to understand that this is not what our expectations are from a normal adult or something like that. You can't expect from a child. Your expectations have to come to a completely different level with a child. And they say like, if your expectations are here, if you set high expectations, and that applies to everything in marriage, everything, and then reality is here, then all of that is going to be what? Disappointment, right? And so that standard or that expectation needs to come all the way here, and you build up with your child or with your spouse or whatever up to the standard that you want to get to, but you build up to it. It's not the expectation, because reality, if the reality is here, all that is going to be disappointment. And so trying to stop your child from sneezing will only lead to frustration and disappointment for you, and hurt and confusion for your child, because your child is going to be very confused. Like, why are you telling me to stop sneezing? Like, how could I stop sneezing? So he says, rather than becoming upset or trying to stop the sneezing, our role is to teach them how to use a tissue and attend to what's causing the sneezing. Maybe whatever is causing this. So this is like kind of what we want to do. So that's kind of the first example that he introduces. And then he says about another example is you have a 2-year-old and then you have a newborn. The 2-year-old goes and starts hitting the newborn. And he was saying a mother came to the author and she's telling him that story, and she's telling him how much it like really hurts her. Like, she's like, why? And she said kind of like what you're saying, why are they so evil? Like, why are they going to hurt the newborn? Like, they're helpless, and the newborn, and why are they doing that? And I get so frustrated and hurt. And then he says it's so easy to want to respond at that time and want to like yell at the 2-year-old or say like, what are you doing and stuff. But he says try to stop, and that's kind of, it's not up there, but it's on the thing here, but like respond and don't react, right? So stop, don't react at the time, and think what could be the cause. Why do you guys think they may be doing that? Huh? Jealousy and attention. Yes. And he says there's he says it could be one thing is your 2-year-old is hitting the new baby because he's feeling a loss of connection with his mother, the point of connection that you mentioned before, and is jealous of the newborn. And it's completely something different if he's trying to play with the newborn and the newborn is not playing because the newborn doesn't even get it. So these could be two completely different things. It's very easy to think of the point of jealousy and the loss of connection, but it could be that they're just trying to really connect with the newborn, not with necessarily with the mom. They're trying to connect with the newborn, but they're not able to connect at all. So that really is bothering them. So they think the way to do that is maybe hitting, and then the baby will start crying, and they will take that as some sort of connection, because I am doing something, they are reacting to that something. They say the book in the chapter says sometimes even negative encounters count as connection to the children, and so even if it's not, and the same reason like when children misbehave with us, they sometimes feel like that's the best way that they will get our attention because we'll start yelling at them, we'll start screaming, even though that's not good connection, it's still connection to them, and so they may want to do it just to get that connection.
Sometimes it's fun.
And so we can't respond effectively until we understand exactly why our children are struggling. So if you know, is it reason 1 or reason 2, that will make a big difference in terms of how you respond. And he's saying in the chapter that like kids a lot of times don't know, or actually parents don't know why the kid is doing something. They just want it to stop. So a lot of times when our children are misbehaving, we want to just stop it. And especially if you are in public. So if you're in church and your child starts crying, or if you're at a grocery store and your child does a mess and embarrasses you in front of everyone, at that point, what do you want? You guys tell me. What's the first thing you want?
Depends on your mood.
Just to stop crying, just to have them stop.
Yeah, just stop. Because I don't want embarrassment, and I just want it to be fine. I'm trying to get through all my errands, all that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to pray if I'm at church, whatever. I'm trying to get through the liturgy, and not have embarrassing moments and stuff like that. And so we just try to stop. But he's saying that's not, if that's all you're jumping to all the time, you will never be able to kind of build that connection with your child, and you'll always be dealing with the situation in a wrong point, in a wrong way rather than the right way, and not be able to fix the thing for the point that Marianne said in the beginning, for the long term, which is everything that we're working for is for the long term. He says another example, and he was talking about how he went to they had a really long drive, and then he goes to bed. He's like exhausted. He walks into the house. His kids are with him, and he goes to his bed, and he like gets on the bed about to sleep. Then both of his daughters come and like sleep right next to him, and on him and stuff. And he's like exhausted. He's like, "Get off of me! I'm trying to sleep. I'm so exhausted from the drive and so on." And so he tells them, "Go to your beds. Go sleep in your own beds." The daughters don't respond. He says, "Go to your beds," and then they're like, "Oh, okay," and then they still stay. And so he was saying he was so tempted at that time to start screaming at them and to start yelling, and I'm so exhausted. Go to your beds and stuff. But he thought about it. He stopped from reacting, and he thought about it, and he realized he could do what right now. He could get up and he could carry them to their beds, but he's not doing that because he is so exhausted. And he's saying the same reason that his kids are not doing it. They are so exhausted. They got on a bed next to him. They want the connection with him, and they won't get up. That doesn't justify what they're doing, and they need to learn obedience. But how is he going to teach them? What do you guys think he did?
What he should do?
Yeah. And he actually successfully did it.
Try to sleep and make them sleep with him, and then move them to their bed, and then he completely
No, he didn't do that.
He
He didn't do that because he believes that obedience is extremely important, and so he wants to teach that lesson. Despite obedience, despite being or doing the right thing, despite being exhausted. So he thought that the best way of showing them that they need to be obedient or doing what they don't feel comfortable with, even when they're exhausted, is he got up, he carried them, and he took them to their beds. And the next day, he talked with them about how I was really tired, I was exhausted, I was the one driving and all that, and I carried you to your bed despite not wanting to do it because I was really exhausted. And that kind of sets the example for the kids of how to do that. Are they going to be able to, like, the next day right away start doing that? Maybe not, but as you show them that you're leading by example and you're doing those principles that are very difficult to do, and showing that by your own life is how you will get them to.
But factly, that will not happen. Like when you
What?
put them in the bed, okay, when you move out, they're gonna come back.
They didn't, thank God. In this situation, they didn't. But yes, I'm sure at times, and I'm sure every situation is a little different. We're kind of talking about mainly like the themes, and you'll have to see how it applies to your children. And it's not, even if something worked one time, I'm sure it's not going to work every single time. But we'll talk about 4 aspects of parenthood that are very important, and one of them is consistency. And so it's extremely important that you're consistent, even if something is not working at times. But we'll get to that. Okay. So I said there's a million reasons for why children misbehave, but we're only going to cover 4 of them. The main one is the first one, which we'll spend more time on, and then the rest of them we'll spend a little bit less time on. But these are the 4 kind of main things that he wants us to be looking at or thinking about when analyzing why our children misbehave. So the first one, which is kind of pretty much what you guys all hit on, is our kids want attention. But he says, I don't like to say that. He says, our kids don't necessarily want attention, they want connection. Who can tell me what they think is the difference between attention and connection? Or are they the same thing?
I feel like attention is just for the moment, but whereas connection is long term.
Okay. What else? So short term versus long term.
Like attention is like action, but connection is like communication.
Okay.
Same meaning.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I'll read something to you that I that I found here. Actually, why don't I have you read it, because they're talking about it. You can read like these, yeah, and then pass it along to Laura to read the rest.
Unfortunately,
so this is the difference between connection and attention.
Unfortunately, connection is often confused with attention. We have heard many parents and teachers say, ignore him, he just wants attention. Remember, all behavior is a form of communication. If a child is communicating with us, then ignoring the communication will not improve the problem. Most children with attention-seeking behaviors will just communicate even louder when ignored. We also know that getting too much attention is no more helpful than ignoring attention-seeking behaviors. Look at celebrities. They receive enormous amounts of attention, and many of their lives are a mess. The solution can only come when we meet the underlying need for the connection. Attention is a call for help. It is an effort to draw others' attention to a missing skill, thing, or quality. Calling for attention is something we do when we fall overboard on a ship. We make as much noise as possible in hopes that we are seen. Our need is realized and someone tosses us a lifeline. Calling for attention says, something within me is missing, and the missing need is often related to connection and the beneficial joy juice, hormones and neurochemicals that comes with it.
Connection is a form of responsive atonement. It is a gift we give when we relinquish our self-centered view of the world in order to participate fully with another person. When we connect, we let go of our judgments about how others should be, release our biases of how things should go, stop listening to the false messages chattering in our heads, and become present. In these moments of connection, all is well. Children require authentic connection with eye contact, touch, presence, and playfulness for growth and development. Children who seek attention are defending against connection. They may have experienced something early in life that taught them that the vulnerability of connection generates pain and or loss. So they trade in or forego connection and settle for whatever bits of positive or negative attention they can get. In doing so, they also miss out on feel-good, brain-building joy juice. Many parents and educators have unknowingly compounded this problem by further trading the joy juice of connection and replacing it with the stuff of tangible rewards.
Thank you. Okay, what are some of the highlights from all that we just read? What are some of your main takeaways from that?
Like attention is like a cry for help instead of like communicating.
Yes. Kind of like what you were saying, it's kind of more of a reaction to an urgent need or an emergency, if you will, versus connection. Okay? What else?
Generally, it sounds for me like saying the word attention is just a negative.
Yes? Has it?
Versus if you say connection, you're actually doing something positive with your child.
Exactly. That's a very good point. What else?
But they're saying kind of goes hand in hand, right? Like the attention's their vocal way of saying something's missing, something is needing, and the connection is the response.
Correct. Yes, but attention sometimes where like the kid just wants so much attention, but they don't want attention. They want the connection. The way they are calling for it is by seeking attention. Exactly. And I think the example that they showed of celebrities, is a very, very good example, right? These guys get so much attention that their life gets completely.
But they can get connections too.
But they barely get.
No, not that type of connection.
No, I mean they can communicate with people. They can I feel that.
But that's not connection. Connection is a lot deeper. That's the thing.
I mean, I when I say attention, I mean I think like when I'm doing something and my son wants to play with me, he'll do something sometimes to make me give my attention to him, and then I'll leave what I'm doing to try to make a connection with him.
Yes.
That's what I mean with attention.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an emergency. It's just that he wants me to play with him, and it's just he wants to turn my attention from whatever I was doing to turn to play with him.
Connection. We can say like
to build the connection with him.
Absolutely.
The first moment you respond with attention has to be followed with the connection, not just the attention and stop it.
Attention?
I don't know. Who's gonna sneak a peek?
Okay.
She's up there.
The other thing, I think maybe some of us have gone through it ourselves, or we know others that have in our families or in our community, but kids who grew up with very little connection with their parents have a lot more challenges to face in their older ages. If you haven't had strong connections in your childhood with your parents, it introduces so many challenges at older ages because you haven't developed that connection, that feeling of being loved, and that intimacy with someone that you're able to know how to form future connections. And you are a lot more likely to be continuously trying to seek attention or call for attention in very negative ways because that's your way of, that's how you've coped with the lack of connection in your childhood years. So it's extremely important to try to develop that and focus on that. Okay, so are we kind of clear on some of the differences between attention and connection? Okay, and so that's the first reason that he emphasized, and he spends a lot of that part of the chapter talking about the difference between attention and connection. I just mentioned one reason why it's important to connect with your child, right? Which is the kind of the future thing. What are some other reasons that you guys think connecting with your child is very important?
So they're open to communicating with you in the future. It's more of a relationship, two-way thing.
Yeah, exactly. We see so many people, and I know friends that hide everything from their parents because they have no connection at all, and they're actually scared from their parents, and so and that has caused so many issues in their life. So that's a very good point. Thank you. What else? Why is building a connection with your child very important?
Because if you're not, they're gonna find it somewhere else,
Yes.
and that could be.
Yes. Yes. And why do they have to seek it? Why do they need connection so much?
Love.
Yeah. We are all created in God's image, right? And God is what?
Love.
Yeah, and God is Trinity, right? And the three persons of the Trinity are in perfect connection and union together, and we are created in that. So every one of us has an innate need for connection and desire for connection, and so we have to have it. And so if you're exactly like you said, if you're not getting it from your parents, you're gonna go and find it somewhere else. So that's very good. What else?
To have a role model to look at.
Yeah.
It's like they can have somebody to look.
Yes.
Trust.
Trust. Yeah. Yeah. And we always hear the same with our relationship with God, right? A lot of people know about God, have heard things about God, listened to sermons about God and stuff. But if you don't personally build a connection between you and God through the sacraments of the church, through your own life of prayer, you won't have that connection with God, and that's gonna lead you to start seeking connections otherwhere. And so it's extremely important to understand that concept of connection and the importance of it with our children. He says here, connection is food for our children's souls. Like, you're leaving their souls starving if you're not giving them connection. We are created as relational beings in the image and likeness of a relational God who is three persons in one communion of love. It's through our relationships with each other and with God that we experience intimacy and develop as human beings. Children grow as persons in and through the connections they have with those in the home. Parenting is all, this is key, because he's summarizing here what parenting kind of is. Parenting is all about connecting with our children as we go through life together and teaching them how to connect in positive ways. Okay? Okay, very good. Can you guys tell me some ways that your children seek connection? So we talked about misbehaving is one of them, which is calling for attention. What are some other ways that your kids seek connection? And he also introduces, and I want to say that, so as you guys are thinking about ways that they are seeking connection, it could be very basic and it could be very deep. So what are some ways that your kids seek connection?
For my two girls, one of them loves touch.
Okay.
Hugging, cheek to cheek.
Mm.
And my oldest, she loves quality time.
Mm.
So like games, playing, anything. And that's like major connection for her.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like learning your kids' love language is very important to know how to connect in the right efficient manner.
There's the kids' love language book.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
Oh, there
Maybe
is?
it's our next
Yeah.
book too.
There it is? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I just have a chart. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
That kid.
Yes.
This one,
All right,
that
that's not
kid.
gonna work.
That's funny.
Get this chart.
Yeah.
So you might need to share this.
Yes, I will.
Yeah. Okay, what else? How do kids seek attention or connection? Sorry.
Yeah. Daughter girls would kind of just tell us, come sit next to me.
That's
You know,
awesome.
That's it, yeah.
That's really awesome. And that's one of the points that we're going to talk about. How do kids seek connection? And we need to take ownership of how to teach them how to seek connection, because their innate ways will be just by calling for attention. But how constructive ways? And the first one is asking and using words. So that's really good.
The older one. The older one does.
That's
The
awesome.
second one. Yeah.
Do you feel like you've developed that in them, or how do you think she was able to?
I mean, we say use your words all the time. I'm sure all the parents say that, like, oh, we don't understand if you're screaming or you're grunting. So we tell them, like, use your words. And then they kind of, I think Abigail's kind of adapted to that.
Cool.
Olivia, we're still working on that.
Yeah.
But she's getting better.
Okay.
Just kind of tell them the action that you want them to do.
Yep.
And just,
Okay. All right. So he says the most effective way of getting a parent's attention is to misbehave. So when we react to that misbehavior, all we're doing is what?
Getting more experience.
Telling them you're successful. You've gotten my attention. But you're really probably hurting your connection because at that time you're probably doing what to them? Yelling, screaming, angry, building very bad connection with them. But it's giving into the attention that they were seeking. And so, yes. So he says something that's very important is you need to connect with your children when they are behaving. When your children are well behaving, this is an amazing time for you to connect with them because then it will show them that this is how I will connect with you, not when you are misbehaving. And so, so just something to keep in mind when your children are behaving well, don't just be like, oh, thank God they are acting fine. Khalas, I'll leave them alone and keep them like they're doing great by themselves. No, this is a perfect time for you to go and connect and encourage that behavior. And that will show them that, hey, I'm able to connect with my parents when I am behaving well.
So sometimes, like, I struggle with, we'll be connecting great. And then in the middle of that wonderful connection is when, like, a misbehavior, like where you would think that they were looking for attention, but they're already getting it. So then it, like, builds. So you're, like, connecting, and then you...
That's the little evil.
She can't let it go.
Like, where it is.
It's like we said before, not
She can't let it go. She cannot let it go. She cannot let it go.
Maybe I express it wrong, but
No, I know what
I've
you mean.
used to say it before, like when God creates, maybe the word, our nature corrupt is that we have a lot of feelings.
Yeah.
The feeling of anger, the feeling of fear, the feeling of happiness, all that's feeling. So that's the little, when it's anger and fear, that's the little evils on us, which needs just a trigger.
Do you think that they're testing you?
I think they're just kids.
Or you're just,
But, like,
So
what, I mean, they're just
And that's
kids,
kind
but...
of one of the future points we'll get to, but I don't know, of course, the exact situation or why it's happening there. But one of the future points is exactly what Albert just hit on, is they're kids. And so you can't expect them. I'll share with you, I was going to do that later, but I'll share with you guys a story now. I was sitting in, so I'm not a parent, but I've been giving Sunday school for like 13 years or something. And so, a few weeks ago, I was in my class and I'm trying to give the lesson, and the kids are misbehaving like crazy, and they won't stop. And I'm like, I was so frustrated, and I'm like, why are you guys acting like kids? And then one of them looks at me. It was the most hilarious thing. I'm confessing this to you guys, but it was just so funny. One of them looks at me and he's like, because we are. And I'm like, okay, balance. My bad. But it was really funny. And it just goes to exactly kind of like we need to understand they are kids. They will miss. That's a part of who kids are. We can't expect them to be amazing. And he showed he made a really funny example later. When we get to it, I'll say it. Actually, let me try to find it now since we are. this topic. Oh yeah. He says parents often tell me their children misbehave because they're lazy, they're rude, they're mean, they're selfish, they're spoiled. These interpretations, which seem so accurate, are in fact judgments and criticism, and they lead to negative or critical parenting behaviors, which we'll get to later. But negative interpretations ignore the fact that the children are learning. Your child is not supposed to be hardworking, to be selfless, to be kind, to be patient. That's what we all want our children to be and expect them to be. Back to that expectation and reality, and the middle is disappointment. And so we are expecting them to be hardworking, selfless, kind, and patient, but in reality, they are not there. But our job as parents is to build them to that. But they are learning. And so when we expect they are here, my standard is here, and I'm not dropping that standard, but I'm not expecting them to be here. I'm building up to that. It's going to make all the difference in that disappointment that lies in the middle. As I'm talking about all of this, please don't take it as like this is how. Like there are so many circumstances that play in every one of our lives that affect all of this, and all of that is what we all aim to. And just like the children are learning, we are learning as well how to be able to get to these. But this is what we should be thinking about and aiming, and hopefully is inspiring us and not letting us down. I don't want to be letting any of y'all down by saying any of this.
So how do you connect when you have two kids, one adult, and you're trying to like make everyone happy? Like one is cuddly and wants to sit on your lap, the other isn't, but then gets jealous because they want your attention, they want to connect with you. And then everyone's trying to get on your lap, then everyone starts fighting, and then everyone starts, you're sharing the toy and
And there are
everyone's
lots
playing
of
happy.
tears.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like how do you connect with like two at the same time? I know like they're
It's very good.
Yeah, exactly.
I can tell you how I tried.
Without going crazy.
I can tell you how it failed.
Yeah.
I can tell you how it failed.
What do you guys think?
If they are both like our kids or Flora or they are talking already and they communicate, just give their attention to something else to share together.
Yeah.
Or if they didn't respond to that, just do both of the things they asked at the same time. I don't know if they want to be on your lap, come and make their attention like I'm playing with them.
But then they start fighting.
Yeah, so in that time, let's go
It's like
something else. Let's
redirect.
go downstairs.
Yeah.
Let's go downstairs. They can see their attention
Distract.
for something else.
Distract.
But if the case like you have one already on
Yeah.
your lap and the other one, just to make the big one communication that she need and give attention to the little one to do it, like make her a job.
Yeah.
You know,
The worst is like at church on Sunday. It's like they'll both want to go to me.
Yeah.
Well, like my husband is right there, but then one wants to sit here, and the other wants to sit here, and then
Both
if
want
they-
you.
Yeah, I don't know
No
why.
one of them needs them.
No, I
So
mean,
in-
so
in
he'll
home-
take one and try to go
Yeah.
so that they don't see
No,
me.
so at
but-
home you need to practice
Yeah.
like your husband get attention of the older one.
Yeah.
Like he built a more connection with her, so when in a church she has a
Yeah.
desire for him, not for you.
Yeah.
I feel like even
And I
in
think
different
that's usually the case. But then because she knows the little one wants to be with me, it's like
Yeah.
She automatically.
she automatically
Yeah.
I feel like
And
even
sometimes
if you
even you
develop-
can replace, like, yeah, but I mean the older
Yeah.
one, as sometimes she gonna need to move out.
Yeah.
Or like so.
Yeah.
So with daddy gonna be more easier,
Yeah.
okay? But if she, in that time she wanna do the opposite,
Yeah.
you're gonna have the options that she gonna stay with daddy at church because she communicate or outside,
Yeah.
and the other one gonna be still with you.
So let me.
I think it's different from child to child.
Very, very normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like now, what we'll take turns. Like, okay, you sit with
Yeah.
mommy
Yeah.
this week, and then next week we'll
Yeah.
switch. And so now they've gone, but she
Yeah.
probably needs a little bit of
But
time.
Olivia still, like the young one, still always wants to. do it.
Sometimes she'll be like, no, I don't want.
And you have deals and promises after church.
Yeah.
You're gonna do that if you behave.
Yeah, you try to promise the world, they don't care.
Yeah, sometimes
They don't
she would not care
It's, I
what
mean,
you promise.
it's very normal.
Yeah.
Like, it's,
And there's something that we always try to do, and I think it's been working for us, is to enforce they love each other. That
Right.
way, if one is craving attention, you're giving it to that person, the other one is not getting the jealousy. They're like, okay, I love my sister, she's getting the attention. So I feel that's always a good thing to instill that love between them.
Yeah.
And just like Bassem was saying, to give them positive praise when they're doing something. We started implementing that too, and that's been helping a lot, like less fighting. Like we'll just start kissing each other sometimes out of nowhere. We're like, oh great. Okay, not that long, guys. What's wrong? Yeah.
What do you do with 3? Like, how
Yeah.
I don't know,
You guys
man.
let us know.
I'm seeing that every day. Every day. Tears are welling up in my eyes.
In anticipation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just,
I don't even know, man.
Stop
I don't
crying,
even
stop
know.
crying.
I don't even know, man. I don't even know.
Let me read one thing,
Grace
Holly,
is
that may
sufficient for you.
may relate to what you're saying. But he goes, because connection is at the heart of our personhood, connecting with our children and teaching them appropriate ways to connect are at the heart of parenting. My sons seek connection like little boys. They run into me, jump over me, climb on me, whether I'm on an important phone call, eating dinner, or shaving. They are still learning how to ask if they can run into me or climb over me. I've learned that during the first 30 minutes when I come home in the evening, each one of my children seeks connection with me, all at the same time. The challenge is that they all seek it at the same exact time. I've learned not to change out of my work clothes until I've connected with each one of them. Our youngest, Alexios, when he was under 2 years old, wanted to be held immediately when I came home and would get upset if I had to put him down. My response was to talk with the other children while I held him. When I did have to put Alexios down to change my clothes, I would smile, I would keep an eye contact, I would sing to him as I changed out of my work clothes. I felt like Mr. Rogers, but if I cut them off or shut down these moments because I wanted some peace and quiet after a long day, the result would always be misbehavior. I get to relax and unwind after I respect their need to connect when they first come in. Of course, this is not going to be exactly how it applies to you, but this is just how he was able to figure out a way when all 3 of his children are trying to connect right as he walks from home, right after a long day of work and driving and all that. And so I think it's just gonna be trial and error and see what works with your house. But I think it does need a little bit more strategy. I don't know. You guys tell me, but I feel like it's easy to just say like I'm gonna take it like one day at a time and just see what works. But I think if we are more, and this is kind of what this whole section that we're covering is respond and don't react. Thinking and being strategic on how we parent and how we respond and how we deal with situations, I think is going to make all the difference.
I think at church is the hardest time.
Yeah.
Like that's
Oh, we're
Yeah,
so
yeah,
vulnerable. Like
yeah.
there's nothing to keep them in. Oh my gosh, it's
yeah,
impossible.
at church is
Before I
hard.
used
It's
to
impossible. There's like
Is this
nothing
gonna
to keep
change?
their
I
attention,
know.
and you're trying to be still. It's like everything that is conducive to
Comes
them
opposite of
misbehaving.
what
It's
they
like
wanna
all in
do.
one place,
Yeah.
and it's in public. It's like oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like the
Sunday's
ultimate.
definitely the
Yes,
hardest.
exactly.
But then there's some things like I've learned from Lauren Albert, like when you guys brought them the little writing pads.
Yeah.
Like he was like on Amazon right after church and
Same
ordered
day.
it.
Hands on
You
time.
look at others and you see what works and you do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's all trial and error and it's never gonna be perfect.
Yeah.
You just have to put that in your mind. Like
Yes.
they're gonna misbehave and no one is gonna like
It's
look
like
down
off
at you.
days and-
We're in church, we're all here
Yeah.
together. And another thing that really worked with us that I'd like to share is communication with your kids. Like I know they're only 3 and 4, but when I tell them 2 days or the night before, hey, tomorrow's church, I know it's a long day, you know, I'll have stuff, but please let's try to behave. We're in God's house. Like we prep them
Yeah.
the day before, and we pray on the way to church together. Like
Really
please,
seeking
Lord,
the Holy
we
Spirit.
do. We say it out loud. Like,
Yeah.
let's please behave today on our way to church.
Yeah.
And so they have they're like ready. They know what they're getting into.
And here's an example that he shares also regarding Sunday. He says it's inevitable. Every Sunday morning, dressed impeccably in their nice church clothes and shoes, My sons can't resist jumping in puddles. Saying to them, don't jump in puddles in your church shoes simply dangles the temptation in front of them and makes them just want to do it so much more. But if I say, if we keep our shoes and clothes clean, we can jump in puddles after church. My boys focus on making a good choice. So that they can get it after. Or I can give gentle reminders. Marcos, when can we jump in puddles? Or Marcos, what kind of shoes and pants do we want to have for church? He responds, clean shoes and pants. Gentle reminders should focus on the behaviors we want to see rather than the ones we don't want to see. If you're emphasizing to them about things that you don't want, all that's doing is it's putting that idea in their head and versus saying what you want. The good behavior. So just to summarize this point, sorry, you were going to
Cindy
say.
said there's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. I didn't know
Thank
if you
you.
were talking. So.
So some easy ways to see connection in a constructive way, or to teach them how to see connection, is using words, like Albert said earlier, asking to talk, asking for time or hugs, and sharing how they're feeling. So teaching them how to do these 4 things is very key. And then you, as a parent, learn how to connect with your children in simple ways, with just like eye contact, simple conversation, just keeping them close while you're doing something else. He says, like, for example, when he goes and mows the lawn, his child has like a little plastic fake one. And so they go out together and he's doing that and they're like using the fake one. I would be careful with that.
Yeah.
But like you can keep them, on the side and be really far from them. But just something. Okay, so the second section of this, which we'll go over in 5 minutes, is be careful with negative interpretation lead to negative parenting. And I think I read that earlier. So what are some other reasons children misbehave that sound like we misinterpret them, but they're really not, is misbehavior as developmentally appropriate. We need to know that they are developing, and we need to understand that. The key 4 things for a parent that he shares, and I think you mentioned one of them, is consistency, is 4 things. Do you guys know what are, like, they always say the 4 major things for parents in terms of how you treat your kids?
Communication.
Yeah. So they're clear, be very clear, be very calm, be very firm, and be very consistent. What? So clear, calm, firm, and consistent. Clear because you're setting clearly what your expectations are or how you're communicating with them. So on. Calm is because you guys live in chaos, with all due respect to all of you. But it really is. With the way the children act, just our world is all chaotic, pretty chaotic. And so how do I keep my inner peace and be calm and steady in the way I'm talking with them? Firmness is extremely important, which I think some parents lack from my reading and what I hear all the time and see. I think some parents don't have the firmness because they want to avoid upsetting their children, which lead to so many disasters later. So that's the firmness, and then consistency. And those 4 also apply to teachers, like in schools and Sunday school. We talk about these 4. So these are 4 very important points for parents: clear, calm, firm, and consistent. 3 C's and an F.
I think it applies to work as well. I mean, it applies to anything you want to do right.
Yeah.
You have these 4.
Yeah. Okay. So the first one is misbehavior as developmentally appropriate. The second one is misbehavior as a result of temperament. And so some children, he will say, their temperament is just they just have an angry nature, right? And or they are tempted to do that. We have no control over the temperaments of our children, but we have a lot of control over how we respond to them. And so that's a key thing. He says we should never compare a child to a sibling or to another child. That's also extremely important. If you say, look at your brother or sister, they're extremely calm. And I think we're all very tempted to do that. Even like spouses sometimes do that to each other, which is super big no, right? And but like comparing or with whoever, comparing with someone else, especially to children, is very, very destructive, and they are not the same person. So keep that in mind. Often the children who struggle the most, this is very like gives you so much hope, but often the children that struggle the most are the ones that learn the most and end up actually being even more successful in different ways. And so just remember that if your child is struggling now, have hope they are probably going to be the ones that are like doing really great later. Okay, the next one is misbehavior. Actually, let me read that. When misbehavior comes from modeling a good response, is to be patient. Allow for a period of transition back into the home. This is the kind of the point that I was talking about earlier. If your child was out in a camp, for example, for a week or two, and they learned a bunch of ways that is not how we act at home, give them some time, allow them transition, think about it, and allow them the transition of, okay, now we're back home, this is how we act at home. Give them that time because they've just been affected. And so that's the third point, misbehavior as modeling poor behavior. They model it either from you or from friends around. So be very careful. Maybe what you are doing is what's making the child do or act the way they're acting. So, and that takes a lot of humility and a lot of self-assessment to be able to notice these things. And he gives more examples here. If you guys want to read the book, you can see. And then the last one is misbehavior as emotional distress. He says, when the misbehavior results from emotional distress, a good response is to attend to our child's distress first and then discuss misbehavior. Instead of an attitude of, I don't care what you're feeling, you can't behave like that, which I think probably many of us have said before, we can take the attitude of, I care about how you're feeling, and you can't behave like that. So not I don't care about what you're feeling, but you can't behave like that. But I care about what you're feeling, and you can't behave like that. Okay. So that is it. So I just want to review some kind of major points that we talked about real quick in the last minute here. So look beyond and beneath the misbehavior. Don't just look at the misbehavior and react to the misbehavior, but respond, but don't react. Look beyond and beneath the misbehavior. We talked about we can't respond effectively without understanding the reason why they're misbehaving. We talked about that one of the main things is we said originally attention, but then we corrected it by saying it's not really they want attention, they want connection, and we talked about the difference between attention and connection. And then we talked about the importance of connection, which is how we are created to have connection, like our relationship with God, and or that we're created in God's image. How it's going to affect the connections they have in the future. How if they don't get connection from you, they will get connection from other places. The more connected kids are to us, I don't think I said that earlier, but the more kids are connected to us, the more they will mirror our behaviors, morals, and values. If you want your kids to grow up to be like you, which maybe we don't want that, but if you want them to mirror some good things in you, the more connected you are to them, the more they're likely to do that. Prioritize connecting with your children daily. Teach them how to see connection in a constructive way. Learn how to connect with them in simple ways. Don't negatively interpret what they're doing because that will lead to negative parenting, but give them the benefit of the doubt. Think that maybe they are still developing. Don't expect them to be here because all of that will be disappointment because reality is down here. Keep the bar up here and work towards it. Be clear, calm, consistent, and firm. Think that they are maybe misbehaving because of their modeling poor behavior, because of their temperament, or because of emotional distress. I talked so much. I'm really sorry. But, okay, let's pray real quick. Who would like to pray for us? Someone please pray for us.
Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you, Lord, for bringing us to this hour. Thank you for blessing Bassem with giving us this talk, for blessing this talk, and help us to be faithful stewards of the children you've given us. And help us always to remember that they're your children, and they're a wonderful gift that you've given us, and help us to be good stewards of that, and help us to raise them in your fear, and help us to be grow in virtue and grow in love and adoration for how you take care of us as we take care of them. Through the intercession of St. Mary, Archangel Michael, St. Paul, and all your saints, hear us and we pray thankfully.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread.